Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you so much for joining this Tuesday. Is it Tuesday, Tina?
I believe it is.
Thank you so much for joining this Tuesday. I'm so excited for this talk this month. I met Tina a few months back, and once I decided that I was going to start doing these monthly talks, I just knew I wanted to invite her, hoping that she would say yes. She is such an amazing resource for people that have speaker on their professional bucket list. So, thanks again for joining today. Become a more magnetic speaker and make the impact you desire is going to be our topic today. As you know, or if we haven't met, I'm Andrea Swanner. I'm the founder of Andrea Swanner Consulting. I'm a consultant that focuses on serving women who have missions to empower, inspire, and uplift others. I'm a strategist. I love to be best friends with my clients, and I know many of my clients have speaker on their bucket list or they're budding speakers now. So I'm super excited to introduce to you Tina Bakehouse. Tina, take it away and tell us all of the amazing things about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Andrea, for having me. I'm excited to be here. That first conversation we had, I just know within you, you truly mean what you say, that you love your clients, you love adding value to their lives. And I feel honored to be part of this conversation today to support you and your current and future clients. I am a spiritual speaking, communication coach and consultant. And I like to say I protect audiences from boring speakers and speeches, but it's more than that. I love diving deeply in with my clients. In my 6 month, I have 2 level programs. The first is the Magnetic Leadership Blueprint series. The second is the Magnetic Speaker Blueprint series. So the first level really focuses in on identifying who you are as a leader, and the second is crafting that TED Talk or keynote. And I also facilitate workshops in improv, as well as to be that yes and leader, storytelling, temperament, and magnetic communication. Those are the things I love doing and what I'm doing in Tina B LLC. But even before that, I've always been that passionate creative that I even posted on LinkedIn today. I used my front farm porch, as a proscenium stage. And that's where I crafted lots of stories, whether on my little Fisher Price tape recorder, which that dates me, I'm a kid of the 80s, or when I crafted various scripts for shows and roped my younger brother and sister into it to perform for my mom and dad for their anniversaries. And from that, I have found that there's real power in how we speak and how we share story. And throughout my entire life, in high school, college, and beyond, I did community theater. I've just completed 5 levels of improvisation. I see value getting out there and doing some performing just to stretch myself to get out of my head. But I absolutely find passion in supporting and helping others understand and identify the who that they are, and then co-create messages that are impactful with others. Because if you don't understand the self, you can't comprehend where the other is and where you want that to go. So I currently right now live on a farm in Southwest Iowa, and I love, love, love all things nature. I enjoy travel. I just got back from a very spiritual solo trip to Bali. I'm an adventurer through and through. I love seeing Broadway shows. And in fact, this Thursday night, I'm having a book signing event that is including musical improv. I'm flying in a New York storyteller. It's going to be performative, awesome, and fun. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. And I just love getting to connect with other people and to help guide them where they are and draw out of them what's in them so they can anchor in their magnetic style.
Well, thank you, Tina. So, and I want to add this. We have right now about 18 people that have joined us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or comments, drop those. And I try not to get too caught up in the conversation and keep up with the comments, but drop those in the comments, your questions. And I will address those during the live. And if I miss it for some reason, I'll definitely go back and check the comments once this is over and get back to you, or send them on to Tina. So Tina, let's get started. So
Yes.
as you were giving your intro, you said some things that I had to write down because I had some questions as you were talking. But the first question I want to ask you is, can anyone become a speaker? Right now, sitting here today in front of you, I have no aspirations of being a speaker. That's not on my bucket list in any way. I fully support those who I serve that have that desire and dream, but not for me at this point in time. But I want to know, if I change my mind tomorrow, next week, next year, can anyone become a speaker?
Absolutely. I love what John Capecci, who's a communication strategist, says. We're all natural orators of our own lives. So we are born to share stories. We're born to communicate with one another. And that's the power of being human. And what makes us different than animals is that this craving to connect. And speaking is one of the most powerful means to do so. I think what it is you've heard the phrase, get out of your own way. And a lot of it is all about mindset. And when I've worked with a lot of clients, some of their opening phrases that they say about themselves, the story that they're telling themselves is, "Well, I'm just not very good at this," or "Public speaking so hard," or, "So and so is much better than I am. I'll never be Brene Brown or Oprah Winfrey or Barack Obama or Nelson Mandela or whomever," right? It's that idea of thinking of yourself as lesser, and that impacts and influences the words that come out of your mouth, how you show up. And what I found in my research in my book, Discovering Our Magnetic Speaker Within, I interviewed over 50 individuals, ranging from keynote speakers, comedians, storytellers, improvisers, communication researchers, and psychologists, and even read lots and lots of texts and academic journals. And what they found is the basic 5 personality traits. Of all of those, it's being open. And that is the openness to saying, I am open to adventure into new territory and newness. And so if you're that person who really, really, really loves routine and absolutely is adverse to new, you might find it a little bit more challenging to get into new waters, if you will, to become a speaker, but that doesn't mean you can't. And what they also found in other studies is it's really the practical experience of training, getting guidance with someone who knows what they're talking about. I've been teaching this in over 20 years, first at the high school level, then I earned my advanced degrees and taught at the collegiate level at Creighton University for 10 years. And then have worked in various organizations and with leaders of all levels for nonprofits and for-profits. And I had some of these amazing people who care about sharing their idea and are passionate about it, but terrified, or they just saw anybody but themselves could do it. So I want to encourage you that, yes, if Andrea, you decide tomorrow that you're like, I want to talk about my passion for business and women in business, and I feel like the platform of the TED speech would be a great place, or get out into various keynote venues, or even just at a smaller scale, go to different conferences, you absolutely can do that. And it's just a matter of, first, shifting that mindset, second, getting some training specifically so you can have a clear message, and then finally doing the work, practicing and working those mechanics of your vocal and physical delivery.
So I have 2 very important questions, and I need to write one down so I don't forget it. And you said it again just now, keynote. And earlier you said crafting a keynote. So talk to us a little bit today about the different types of talks one can give. In crafting, I own a craft business, so that word crafting has a very special, meaningful word to me. When I create a product, craft a product, there's a lot of care that goes into that. There's a lot of thought that goes into that when I'm creating an order, fulfilling an order. I want that person that I'm delivering that order to be happy with it. I want it to be meaningful to them. I want them to know that I've put a lot of time and careful touches into that. So when you say crafting a keynote, What exactly does that mean? And what is a keynote? Should every speaker have a keynote? When I go to an event, I see keynote speaker. What exactly is a keynote speaker? And what type of keynote talk do I need to have? And how do I craft my keynote?
Okay, you hit on a lot of things. The first, I want to back up just a step so that everybody who's listening and will be listening is that it's a level of decorum that you need to ask yourself is what is the level of formality in which I'm speaking? And so you're going to have various, because you had an early question of what types of business presentations
Mhm.
could a person as a speaker give? And the first is thinking level of formality. So how many people are in the space? The more people, the bigger the stage, the more formal the talk. So think of it at the first level is when you're networking, you're speaking, but that's very informal in comparison to a TED Talk or a keynote. So for that level, it's thinking of how are you going to talk about you and your business and have that clarity of what's your role, what's your passion, what kinds of questions can you ask of others to be interested versus just trying to be interesting. And also think ahead of time of what might be some potential questions people would ask you. Have those ready along with in your back pocket some great stories to illustrate your ideas. So that takes some level of preparation. And potentially you might get some payment out of it. You might land a client or a potential partner that will help find you referrals for future work. The next level is then if you are asked to be on a panel discussion or facilitate a workshop for a conference. And that does require even more preparation. You may be paid for this, or it's just a great marketing representation of you, your expertise, your credibility, and your business. And so that takes knowing what you're going to talk about, preparing visual aids that support what you're talking about, and knowing that target audience. And then the last piece is where you did more of your questions, which all revolve around a keynote. And I would say that's your highest level as a speaker presentation, because the more you get out there and speak, if you have books published and you're well established, your highest level of speakers can get 6 figures or more for their talks. I know Oprah Winfrey, I think it's like $1 million. It's a ridiculous amount. Now, granted, she's paved the way with lots of expertise with her various background in media and published work and just traveling and speaking. And so note that the more experience you get out there, the more money you can request. And it's aligning, first of all, ask yourself, do I really want that responsibility and that level of formality of speaking? And in your gut right now, Andrea, now's not the time. You're not there. And I know for me, I have done some. I haven't really gone out and pursued it heavily because my love space is guiding my clients to get them there and help them see themselves as a speaker, a leader speaker, and craft that particular type of talk, whether it's a TED Talk or a keynote, and then get those deliverables with the mechanics. When you ask, well, what exactly is a keynote? Look at it as a signature talk. It's in alignment with what is it that you know about, you're passionate about, and that really supports what you and your business are all about. So I think of a leadership coach, Sarah Noel Wilson, for example. She has a podcast. She has a really cool website. She's published a book. And her focus is really getting the elephant out of the room and talking about those crucial conversations that are challenging. You don't want the avoidant. There's different types of elephants, right? Mm-hmm. So her keynote hits on that. She also hits on mental health issues because she has expressed background and experience with overcoming her panic attacks, etc. So she's had that experience. She's gone through some work to get through it. So that's the foundation. First, ask yourself, do I want to do this? And if yes, then what is my field for which I am speaking? And what would be that core signature talk? Ideally, like when I think about it, if you've published a book, like I have, Discovering Our Magnetic Speaker Within, this has multiple keynotes in it. The foundational one is probably this idea of what does it mean to be magnetic and what does it take? And I actually did that talk just a couple of weeks ago for business consultants and various business owners so that they can be in alignment with their leader speaker self to represent their business. And then it's building from there, asking yourself, who's my target audience? Who is willing to pay for this particular talk? When I think of working with my clients, I had one particular interview for this book, and his name is Frank, and he is amazing as a comedian and a keynote speaker. And he realized he's focusing on mental health only and how to do suicide prevention. He says, you got to stay in your lane. Now, you may know a lot of things you care about that you want to talk about, but you don't want to go all over the place. Another client of mine, Seth, he's all about soil health. He's pro-environment. He's going to talk about that and advocate policy changes. So it's asking yourself, what's your expertise? Who are these people that are going to be listening to your talk? For Frank and suicide prevention, he's looking at the top 6 people, types of professions, types of organizations that are most apt to pay for it, but also talk about this topic. So healthcare is a big one. Even farmers are considered in that top 10 group of most apt for suicide, et cetera. So it's tuning into that top target market, because if you create a beautiful talk and you don't know who's going to listen to it and it's not crafted for them, then you're not going to be landing any form of presentations. So I hope that answers your question. It's first, ask yes, do I want to do it? 2, what do I know about this topic? And 3, who is going to actually listen to it? And think of it as your signature talk. That very first one is the keynote. And then from there, you can branch other keynotes that are all in alignment, I would say, of one basic topic. And I've done some research and noticed that leadership is one of the highest attractive ones that people are looking for, as well as letting go of stress. So that's something to think about too, is what is relevant and timely to be talking about.
So, Tina, when I first started this business and had a coach, and they try to teach you like a framework, and promote, educate, and teach were the 3 things that I was taught. Any type of content that you have, anytime you get before your audience, whether it's a live, a Facebook post, you want to either promote, educate, or teach. So as a speaker, would you say there are key elements that you need to always include in a talk, like the promote, educate, teach? What are those? And are those part of becoming a magnetic speaker?
Yeah, and I would lump in together educate and teach are sort of the same thing in some ways, because to me, informing people is teaching or educating, and promoting is more that persuasive appeal. And I believe that all communication is persuasive. Your audience has 2 choices: to tune you out or choose to listen. So that other piece that really is important is inspiration. You absolutely need to inspire your audience to choose to listen to you, and potentially motivate them to either think differently or do different, or both, right? And that's essential. That's why people hire and pay the big bucks for the Mel Robbins out there, because they want to be change makers, whether with their own behaviors on a self-development scale or within their organizations. When you are thinking about engaging your audience, it's really having clarity on balancing fresh perspective, because lots of things have been talked about before. You want to put in your own angle. That's where balancing sharing information with experience comes into play, because you want to balance that out. If you talk too much about data and research, you're going to have a lot of ears closed. If you, however, do 0 data and information, you will have hurt your authority on that topic and lack credibility. So if you can think of a healthy, happy balance, TED Talks, which is a certain very specialized talk, tends to be 65% stories and the other percentage data, because people really choose to listen to stories. Stories, according to Jerome Bruner, who's a social psychologist, says approximately stories are 22 times more memorable than facts or data. So if you put that into mind, when you are crafting that bigger talk that's anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, it's really essential that you bring in story. And to humanize yourself, it's really great when you can put in stories about yourself. What you've learned, what was that lesson learned from your experience that aligns with your topic.
Okay, Tina. So one reason that I know I have no business being a speaker at this point in time is I'm always very afraid is the word that I want to say, but there's really no fear involved. But I don't like to talk a lot about myself. Even when I do my intro, I'm like, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. Boom, I'm on to the next thing. I don't want to bore people, turn people off. I don't know what it is, but that's why I have no business being a speaker. I don't want to get too involved in who I am. So, if I am preparing to be a speaker, what areas would you say I would need to become more comfortable in order to get myself to the point of being a successful speaker?
It's such a great point. I laugh a little bit internally when you say you just want to get onto it. You don't want to talk about yourself, because I actually had a presentation for the state of Iowa Library Association for all library executive directors. And I didn't include any information about myself. I dove into story. I gave some credibility, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of it, I said, oh, by the way, this is me. This is what I do, blah, blah, blah. Because like you, I find I want to get in there, share information, and help guide people. So your question is, what is it I need to think about and learn in order to be more competent and confident as a speaker?
Yes.
When I first of all, it is acknowledging that there are best speaking practices, and that requires some training. And I know so many people I've worked with have gone to college and they've taken that public speaking course, but that could have been 20 plus years ago. And so
Yes.
it's sort of way back there in their bank of knowledge. Having that fresh insight of there are best organizational patterns, and more times than not, research has shown that people are more apt to, in their minds, think they're more effective than what they really are sometimes, and not ask for help. In fact, men, gender specific, are less apt to ask for help because they feel like it's taking away their power. There was a study that actually talked about that. So it's being aware that when you don't know, but yet you do want to do the thing we call speaking, it's asking for help and getting good with that. And so at foundational level, think of what does this message require? And that takes some back work with your context. Understand context leads to content. Do that audience analysis, do that situation analysis, then that formulates your message. And based on if you're informing, motivating, or if you're persuading, there are various different styles in which you orchestrate or organize your information. You want to, as Dale Carnegie, who's the grandfather of public speaking, says, you want to tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. And by and large, I have found a lot of speakers do not transition. They do not go from one idea to the next. You want to keep your audience in the know. If their ears are not clear where you're going and their mind starts to wander, then they start looking at their cell phone and they get distracted with what's next as opposed to your talk, you've lost them. The other discouraging fact is there's this forgetting curve. The moment your audience leaves that space, about 70% of your talk has been forgotten. It's on you as that speaker to really craft an organized talk, to balance your data, to balance that with good story and examples to illustrate what you mean, and to have beautiful visuals that support. So you want to think of your different listeners. I'm much more of an audible listener. I love analogy, alliteration, and stories, but not everybody goes to that. They might prefer visual or kinesthetic, which is by a show of hands. Use different strategies to hook all those different listeners. And that can require some guidance because you don't know what you don't know. Then it takes practice. Just looking at your notes and thinking about it is not the same as speaking it out loud and actually doing the work of the practice and getting into a conversational style. Building your confidence really takes preparation, and practice. But also having a mentor or having a coach or having someone that gives you that little boost, because they catch you with where your mind is, because we play tapes in our minds all the time and we don't necessarily catch it until maybe it's too late. And you can change those thought patterns by getting basic practice and support.
So, to become a more magnetic speaker, is that something that Andrea can do on her own? Can I just write out my keynote speech and start applying for opportunities to speak and just grow into a magnetic speaker on my own? Or do I really need someone to train me, take me by the hand, teach me the fundamentals? Let's talk about education as far as becoming a speaker.
Absolutely. I would say I started my business 4 years ago and I did all the things by myself. I did some success, but do I have a degree in business or a background knowledge in what it takes to run a really clear, strong business from a marketing standpoint, from how to create systems and put them in place so it functions well? Absolutely not. After a year and a half of trying all the things, working way too many hours, I recognized I could really use the support of a business coach. And I signed up for a 1-year program with a business coach to guide me into seeing where my gaps were for my business. And I realized very quickly, sales, that's something, I've been an educator for 20 years. I'm in this field of communication and speech and theater and English teaching at the high school level, then the collegiate level and beyond. That's my sweet spot. But being able to promote it, being able to run a business without stressing out about it, doing invoices, having good records, all that organization stuff, not natural to me at all. In fact, it was painful and took a lot longer for me than someone who knows what they're doing and has been in it for a while and has that brain that is just sequential, organizer, etc. That, I would say, is a great analogy to be thinking about as a magnetic speaker. Absolutely. If you desire to do it, I don't want to discourage you from doing it. Start writing that keynote, start researching, start really crafting story, and put yourself out there. Get out there and start looking at various conferences in your field, various opportunities in your community to go speak. What I do know is if you want to land high level, well-paid speeches, you'll most likely, if you've had zero education or little to none, I would recommend getting guidance in that, because there is so much competition out there. And if you don't know how to clearly make a message and make a strong, quirky title that aligns with what you're passionate about, you're probably not going to land a talk. And 2, it takes lots and lots and lots of preparation and practice, like I mentioned earlier. And if you're prepping and practicing, it's going to take you a longer time if you're not exactly sure of how to organize your thoughts. People tend to do a lot of topical organization, which can be great, but they can get really wordy, really clunky, and very inefficient and ineffective with it. And I think that that's where it takes the idea of experimentation's great, but if you want to get there faster, more efficiently, getting some guidance definitely gets you there. and helps you capitalize and draw out what's already inside yourself.
So, Tina, you just said do some research. Like if I decide to take this route alone, not hire someone like yourself, to educate me, take me by the hand, that I need to do research. But I'm a speaker. I'm going to get up there and tell stories about myself, tell stories about my journey. So why do I need to do research?
Well, that's a great question in terms of you know yourself better than anybody else, but what you don't know probably is the 5 beats of how to craft a really engaging story. Because what I have found is most clients that I work with have one of two problems. Either A, I have so many stories, I don't know where to start. And they can talk on and on and on and on and on. And sleepy time. Okay. To the other extreme of, I don't think I got a story. Yeah, I'm boring. In fact, I had a client say that her biggest fear was, and she was a high level CEO, of being boring. And I think most of us, if we dig deeply, we don't want to see people sleeping, yawning, and being bored with what we have to say, especially if it's our own story. Because similar to when I taught years and years ago in my English class, I learned very quickly the poetry unit was painful because everybody, all my students, love their poem and hated feedback. So I made it super simple and say, you get the points if you put in one metaphor and you do these concrete things just to teach them crafting ideas of language and things of that nature. What I am trying to say is, yes, you know yourself. However, what you may not know is the beautiful gift that we call storytelling, that we call being that higher level of engagement to motivate your audience to choose to listen to you. Yes, listening to great stories, that can be one part of your research, and taking notes of, oh, what I liked about this one. Reading books about storytelling can help. Talking to other great keynote speakers and witnessing them in action is fantastic. But that only goes so far. And what you can do is start to practice and maybe put it out there and get some feedback from people that you value their opinion, and then see where that lands. Because ultimately, your story, even though it's about you, it's really about your audience, because what you want is for them to choose to listen to you and see themselves in your story. Because if you make your audience the hero of your story, they're going to love you, they're going to delight in you, and they're going to listen to you.
Okay, I love that you said all of that about storytelling. A lot of the clients that I support are speakers, or they have the desire to become speakers on a higher level. And so at some point in the last 11 or 12 months, I decided I wanted to do, and met you during this, wanted to do more research into being a speaker, becoming a speaker, creating talks, and read a book on storytelling and was completely blown away by, oh my gosh, there are components to storytelling other than me getting on a stage and talking about whatever it is that I want to talk about, my life, as a farm girl or whatever, that there are elements to that, because I want people to walk away from my talk and it be memorable, or components of it be memorable, or me as the speaker be memorable. So I love that you talked about that. And realized at that point that I really wanted to learn more about becoming a speaker, and met you. So this has been an amazing journey. So,
and I would love to know, before we move on, I would love to know what book that was, because I've read tons on storytelling.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. And
if you could put it in the notes later, that'd be great too.
I will. And she actually has a second book, and I'm going to start reading the second book, but I'll put that in the notes and I'll send it to you, Tina. I want to get your thought on it. I read some of the, and the reviews weren't very good about the book, but I listened to it on Audible anyway, and it was amazing. So I want to get your thoughts on that. So I'll send you the author of that book. But Tina, so I've been really excited about this part, because I have a lot of people that come to me, or people that I work with, or people that I even network with, that have being a TED speaker on their list of to-dos. And you have done that. And I love listening to TED Talks. I love listening to TEDx Talks. They're always very, like, even though I'm watching it on this tiny little device, I always feel like I'm there. Like, I feel like I've been teleported there and I'm in the audience and I'm actually watching the speaker on stage. And talk to us about that magic and ways to create that magic. But first of all, tell us what a TED Talk is.
Well, it is a special type of form of talk that's 18 minutes about one idea. One idea we're spreading. So different than a keynote where you may share, multiple different, a lot of times in a keynote, the biggest difference I have found is it can hit on a lot of different points that are worth, sharing with other people. But what a TED Talk does is it's one thread of one idea. So if you think of the power of vulnerability, which is one of the most popular TED Talks of all time, it's Brene Brown's. It's had more than 20 million views, I think, at this point. Or Amy Cuddy's on nonverbal communication and with gestures and how we do that power pose and things of that nature. They have one idea and then they support it with stories, theirs and others, as well as research. The TED experience, I've had the opportunity to do 2 of them. One was focused in 2018 about a new experience together, that there's this idea of agriculture and arts, and that when we share food together, that we get a beautiful experience together. And I was doing ag art camps on my farm, teaching people where their food comes from and partnering with artists, which was a cool experience. Transition now, 6 years later, I had the opportunity just recently, early mid-March, to do a TED Talk focusing on finding your voice through story. And the process of both was very different for me. I was in different phases and stages of my life. One was I thought I was going to start this nonprofit back in 2017, 2018 era, really trying to get ag arts camps up and rolling. And so something, as you're thinking about it, if you want to do this really highly acclaimed credibility speech, which is the TEDx talk, see where you are. What are you passionate about? What is a problem that you're potentially solving with your research, the work that you do, etc. And in my world, I really at that point was caring about the food that was being placed into children's mouths. And we here in the Midwest, we have the richest soil in the world and our kiddos are eating junk. And that's getting worse and worse as, we're 6 years later. And so that was the problem I was thinking about in a creative way and thought, why not use art to teach, whether visual, performance, etc., these young people and families where their food comes from. So I had the Ronald McDonald House come to my farm, etc. Then things have changed. 6 years later, I'm in a business. And I knew that TED Talk, though it's great I got to do it, does not align with where I'm at professionally now, which is doing much more communication consulting and coaching individuals and teams. And so when I got this opportunity to apply for and get a storytelling kind of TED Talk, it really landed at the right time in the right place. And what the process entails is, first of all, you have to be very, very, very clear on what is that one idea worth spreading. That's where the application falls apart a lot of times, is people have not spent enough time in asking themselves, what is my one idea worth spreading? It's got to be one idea. It's got to be clearly timely and relevant to what are we experiencing. When I think about this, for example, I've been doing lots of yes and leadership workshops. Being a yes and leader, it's an attitude. It's similar to what improvisers in theater and on stages do, which is accepting the moment as it occurs and then adding something to it. it was very timely to even facilitate those online because of the pandemic. How do you navigate change and uncertainty when everything's in an upheaval, when we're doing things online that used to be in person and all of that? It's really forced us to be a lot more creative. So it's helping you think in terms of that creator that you have inside of yourself, and then making it in alignment with what you care about and what's timely and relevant to your audience. And then you can go through the application process. And the application is really crucial because some of them require videos, like a little 2 to 3 minute snippet. Others require at least really clear that idea and the breakdown. And every single day there's a TED Talk worldwide. So you can Google it and literally find a hosting site, whether it's on a college campus or in any other kinds of spaces, because it does take licensing. It takes certain rules. I mean, the red dot has to be there with the logo, etc. And they always have a theme. And that's where you want to make sure that you look for a theme where your talk would potentially align with. And from there, it's really the development phase. And that is thinking in terms of, how do I start? What's the core idea? And how do I support that core idea? And then how do I end? And one thing you might consider is even just sketching that out, having an outline in hand, so that it really helps guide you through the application process, so that you can answer those questions and do so in a clear, concrete way. TED is very particular, and they can sense when something's kind of murky and unclear. And that's where me, along with others, and I know some other really great TEDx coaches that really are great at helping you flush it out. You come with like a rough idea and they help guide you into more clarity, because a lot of times I feel like it's getting that idea. That's the hardest part. Once the idea has been flushed out, then it's like, how do I, generate that developed outline? And that's the next phase.
So if I someday have the desire to be on a TED stage, but I'm not quite doing a lot of speaking events now, would you say, guide us through the spectrum of events, speaking events that you recommend in order to be prepared for a TED stage?
It's a great question, because I don't think there's one cookie cutter way to do that. I just think it's say yes and. The moment you get asked to speak, you say yes, no matter what, because it gets you out there. It gets you out there to speak, and it could be in any kind of venue. So it could be as simple as in your local church, in your son or daughter's or child's community 4-H club, and you are giving a demonstration. You could be in your local chamber where you're doing a 20-minute blurb. There's a wide range. So think small and take those baby steps and just try out various different audiences, various different venues and ways to get yourself just in the practice of getting up in front of people. Because to me, that is the building of confidence. The foundation of confidence comes from the practice of it. And I'm sure you've heard of the Gladwell's 10,000 hours rule. Well, in my book, I address that actually with a communication studies professor. And when you think of communication and the formality of public speaking, 10,000 hours is a ridiculous amount for someone that is a business owner that just wants to get on stages. It's more of someone like Joyce Yang, who is this amazing professional pianist, who maybe takes just a couple days off a year and practices piano 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours almost every day, and travels worldwide. You're probably not wanting to be that level of speaker, and that's 10,000 plus hours. Think of it in terms of about 1,000-ish hours, and that's what this professor had talked about in the field of communication when he has worked in the consulting world with people who have maybe horrific gestures and they want to be much more calm and confident and connected with their words. It took about 1,000 hours of practice. and even thinking about the amount of time that you practice and spacing it out. So the more snippets of practice you do over a standard time, the better you're going to get, as opposed to saying, I'm going to practice this presentation 10 times today for 3 hours. That's not as effective as just doing it once, span over, 10 days, if you will, or 7 days.
So we're at about 45 minutes, Tina. The last thing I would love for you to share with us, I want you to give us the best advice, the best encouragement, best words of wisdom that you have for those of us that are watching today that have the desire to be better speakers on stage. If you could give us a little swag bag of advice today to take with us to put into practice today of advice, what would that be?
I would say first it's analyze with authenticity. This word authentic gets thrown around a lot, but at the core, it's analyzing the who that you are. Be aware of your specific personality, your means of how you think, how you use words, whether you're more abstract, concrete, sequential, or random, because you have a specific predisposition, your temperament, that about 40 to 60% of who you are is predetermined based on genetic makeup. And that impacts how you lead, how you work, how you use words and tools to achieve your goals. So step back and first analyze, who is this person that I call, in my case, Tina, or in your case, Andrea, or whomever is listening? And what is that passion that I have that I care about? Because even if you're an introvert or extrovert, and those words are used a lot too, I also think those don't matter as much as where you get your energy from, because people think I'm much more of an extrovert than I really am. I generate more energy with downtime and alone time. But think about that you can have magnetism. You can have excitement and enthusiasm for a given topic, but you have to know what that is. You have to take an inventory and be clear upon what is that and how can I speak about it and to whom. So that's that first piece of 3, is analyze with authenticity. Once you get into that realm, then I want you to think about, how are you going to craft your content? Where do you want to go? What stages, what spaces, what places you want to be in? And start small. It doesn't have to be huge and big, but just getting out there, get into different in-person and virtual spaces, and even just getting your phone and just starting a LinkedIn or Facebook Live or YouTube, whatever your platform is. Even just commit to once or twice a month just to get the practice, can put you out there. But it's really clearly crafting content. And like Andrea mentioned earlier, find those books, those resources, ask questions, be in the learned mindset of a growth, that you are open to learning and not being stuck in your ways. That will help you vastly. There's so many books out there in terms of how to organize your information. I mean, mine is here as well, and it is a reference guide. It literally breaks down the mind, and that's the first analysis of how does your mind work? What is your mindset? Get out of your conditioned self and into your authentic self. Then it's the message, and where do you craft your message? How do you craft story? There's a whole chapter on storytelling, whole chapter on how do you analyze your audience and engage them and be audience centered and get into a flow of communication using that psychology flow theory by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And then finally, in addition to analyzing yourself and the other with authenticity and crafting clear, engaging content, it's perfecting your performance. And that's where the mechanics comes into play. And that is your vocal and physical delivery, and that you have it inside of you to be able to share story, to share presentations. And I had one client once say to me after a session, he goes, "Oh, Tina, there's just so much to think about, like my gestures, my facial expressions, all these things. And yet I have content and I'm supposed to deliver it. And oh my gosh, nah." And he's freaking out. And I said to him, whoa, back up the truck. You don't have to think about any of your facial expressions, your gestures, any of that, Because guess what? If you focus on really good, strong, solid content and you trust yourself within the self, your body, your voice, all of it is this powerful instrument. Let the symphony work together. Let the words that you say guide your gestures, guide your vocal inflection. And if you let your passion lead the communication, guess what? You're going to have a performance of a lifetime. And that's what it takes, is the layers. Just like you have a blueprint for building a home, you got to have a blueprint for being a speaker. And I definitely love supporting your people, Andrea, as well as others. And I'm happy to offer a 20% discount to have a 1-hour consultation with me, just to get that goal and bring it out.
That's amazing, Tina. Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Because I care so much about guiding people and wanting them to build in that confidence, because I feel like that's the foundation that ends up crumbling the house of the speaker, is the confidence piece. It's how we see ourselves.
I agree with that. So the question I always get is, will this be available later? Yes, it will live on LinkedIn. It's also on my YouTube channel. And Tina, will you provide where to get your book, and how people can get in touch with you? And I'll add that to the YouTube notes, the LinkedIn notes underneath this event. And you've talked a little bit about audience, analyzing your audience. I would love for us to talk about another one of these discussions on audience analyzation, because that's so important. Knowing who you're talking to is so important. And I don't think people really understand how important that is. So offline, can you and I discuss that for
Absolutely.
another round?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to, Andrea. So I'll answer your questions. First of all, my website is one of the best ways to get a hold of me. It's my hub of all the things. It's just tinabakehouse.com. That's
Okay.
Tina, Tina, Bakehouse, B as in boy, AKEHOUSE. That's bake as in baking cookies, and house as in casa.com. And on that hub, you'll find videos, you'll find my blog, which I also provide as newsletters. You can sign up for my newsletter. I don't pummel you every day. It's like twice a month with thoughtful information and insights. And you can also purchase my book right there on tinabakehouse.com. And exciting news, my actual audiobook is live. It just got live on Friday. I just got that message just recently. So I'm happy to gift a free chapter of the audiobook to your audience as well, if that would be of interest. And so I can send you the email link, Andrea, so that you can post that as well in the notes. So you have the option of not only the print version of my book, but also audio. And if you can't find me, you can just look up Tina Bakehouse on Amazon. It's there as well. And I have a YouTube channel, Magnetic Speaking with Tina B. And I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, so you can just connect with me there. I try to post yummy, cool thoughts, videos, content in that space. In fact, I think that's how Andrea and I met.
Yes.
Through LinkedIn.
Yes. So, Tina, thank you so much for everything today. I know it's been a little bit less than an hour, but there's so much more we could discuss. There's so much that goes into being a speaker. So I hope everyone that has that on their list or is already speaking will look Tina up and get some insights and tidbits from her. Sign up for a session with her. She's gifting that. Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope you found the information educational, inspiring. Thank you again, Tina. I appreciate you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate getting the opportunity to connect with you and to add value for your listeners, because I do care about people getting out there and being that magnetic speaker, using their words, their voice, their bodies, their energy, and overall essence to make that impact they desire.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tina. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.